while we simultaneously challenge the institutional racism that we know still exists. So at the end of the day, I'm relying more on you, these young people at the table. I'm relying more on my children as they're developing than I am on President Obama. Because at the end of the day, I know as president, there's only a limited amount that he has the ability to do. And I know that if I support him as a responsible member of the electorate, I will hold him accountable for doing what he said he was going to do and fighting for the ideological and legislative policies that I agree with. But if I have the gumption to challenge elected officials, but not build for myself, not only am I a coward, but I'm negligent. The future of the African American community is going to have to be about dealing with racism and raggediness. Because if we deal with the racism, but we haven't lifted ourselves, then it's all for naught. But if we lift ourselves, and that racism continues to exist institutionally in a way where it bars us from access to resources and opportunity, then the fight has to increase. Questions? I'm sorry.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we are listening to a Friday forum featuring Jeffrey Johnson, CEO of Jeff's Nation and author of Everything I'm Not Made Me Everything I Am. We will return to our speaker momentarily for our traditional City Club questions. We encourage you to formulate your questions now and remind you to keep them brief and to the point. We welcome you to this City Club Forum. We want to remind you that members and guests alike are welcome to attend City Club forums here in downtown Cleveland at 850 Euclid Avenue, and hope everyone listening will join the City Club. Please visit our website to see a full schedule of our upcoming programs. Our greetings go to those present in the room, especially to those who are guests. We hope you will join the City Club and become active in our ongoing civic dialogue. Now, let's return to our speaker for our traditional City Club question and answer period. We welcome questions from everyone, including guests, and holding the microphone today is PR and Program Manager Carrie Miller. Let's have our first question, please. Mr. Johnson.
Good afternoon. Hello. Good afternoon, sir. Question for us, like you made reference to the African American experience, but in the area of immigration and migration, there have been similar other experiences among ethnic groups like Irish Catholics, Jews, sure, Italians, blacks, and now currently Hispanics as it relates to discrimination. Mm-hmm. What do you see are some of the parallels and similarities amongst their experiences? And secondly, how do you propose tearing barriers down among these ethnic groups? Wow.
I'll try to answer this as quickly as I can. I think that there are a large number of similarities. And I think that oftentimes we want to ignore those similarities in the name of saying whose condition was worse or whose experience was worse than another. And so the reality is that there have been multiple groups that have been persecuted in the United States of America, not just ethnic but religious, not just religious but sexual orientation. And so if we look at the Irish, or we look at if we look at the Chinese, for that matter, or the Japanese, rather, and what happened during World War II, you can begin to point to historical notes where one group more than another was persecuted for whatever reason, because of what may have been going on internationally. I think as we look at what's happening with the war on terror, we began to see not only an attack on those that were Muslim, but because of the ignorance of so many Americans, anybody that they thought looked Muslim. And so if you were a Sikh, then that was Muslim enough for me. And I now begin so I think that there have been a number of points within history where there's similarities. I do, however, think that there is a unique experience for the African American. And that story is connected to the issue of legal slavery that lasted for so many generations. And as a result of that, there was such a displacement of a whole race of people that isn't comparable to anything else. And so I think as we begin to deal with the realities of how to fix that in this country, it doesn't mean that we say that what happened to African Americans was worse than what happened to anybody else. It means that let's begin to have an honest conversation about history, the implications of that history, and what we need to do to begin to address righting the wrongs of the culture that has been allowed to persist in the United States. How do we begin to break down some of those walls is very different. I don't think you can legislate that. And I think that the way that I have personally seen it work is it has to happen with individuals that are courageous enough to step outside of their comfort zone. And so for those of us that work in places with people of a different race or an ethnicity or a religion or a sexual orientation, it's about, are we willing to have conversation with them to build relationships? Why? Because as we build those relationships, we are able to be ambassadors of reason and ambassadors of justice. What does that mean? That means as an African-American male who is a member of a culture that I believe is terribly homophobic. I have heard conversations about homosexual black men amongst conversations of so-called heterosexual black men that begin to go down every single stereotype that they're not my brother, blah, 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 blah. But as a result of me being able to step out of my comfort zone and being able to create relationships with various members of the homosexual community, it doesn't make me some expert on homosexual culture. But it does mean that when I'm in a room where there is no one that is a part of that group, and I'm able to begin to speak with reason and justice to those that don't have perspective, that's how those walls begin to break down. Because until there is someone in the room that looks like you and me, that's willing to be the voice of reason and justice, the walls don't fall enough normally for others to be able to step out of their comfort zone. I'll give you an example and then go to the next question. When I was president of Black Student Union at the University of Toledo, we created a black homecoming. And we created a black homecoming not because we wanted to be separate. We created a black homecoming because of all the events that the university did. They left out some key components culturally of what black people like to do. So they didn't have a place you could eat and dance, right? So as a member of the as the president of the Black Student Union, my job was to be able to represent the needs and concerns academically and socially of all the African-American students on the campus, to be able to express and exhibit the African-American culture to the broader student population. Well, I thought that that fit within the confines of my responsibility as president of Black Student Union, to be able to provide a cultural experience that was relevant for those that were of African descent, that were coming back to the university as alumni, or those at the university that were African-American students that wanted to experience something that was consistent with their cultural beliefs, values, mores, and norms that the rest of the campus wasn't doing. But we were labeled as separatists. I mean, they put a picture of the KKK and the BSU in the paper. I was like, word? Maybe I should get more aggressive. Here's how we remedied it. We never felt the need to defend ourselves outside of saying what the Constitution said. But because on Monday morning after homecoming, the front page of the paper had a picture of Black homecoming. And in the center of the picture, sweating out of his suit, was Pat D'Alessandro, the white president of student government. And the caption read, "I was there, why weren't you?" Now, he wasn't there because as president of student government, he felt the need to be able to attend all student events. He came because he was my boy. Because we had a friendship, and I was like, Pat, yo, man, you got to come through. It's going to be off the chain. The food's going to be good, and you're going to have a good time. So Pat was like, look, I'm going to get my crew. So they got a bus because culturally, white folks in college like to drink a lot. And he was a safe partier. So they pull a bus up to Black homecoming with a gang of white students, come in, everybody has a good time. So there were people that left that homecoming having never been at a social event with Black students before, and who felt welcomed, who felt safe, who felt like nobody was judging them, that felt like they had a good time. And while this may have not been the music that they normally listened to or the kind of food that they normally ate, they had a magnificent time. And it was a bridge builder for a segment of the population that would have never had it before. But if Pat and I weren't friends, there never would have been the kind of trust or relationship that said, look, bring as many of your friends as you want to, and trust me, they'll feel comfortable. Because if we didn't have trust, he wouldn't feel comfortable bringing friends that might feel uncomfortable. And so if we're willing to step outside of our comfort zone, create relationships, and be ambassadors of reason and justice, that's how slowly but surely we're able to begin to see those walls come down.